What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is the long-awaited F-5E Tiger, I think it's called. I don't know, Tiger Shark, something like that. And boy oh boy, has this thing broken the game. Unintentionally. It was at least in good faith, but it did break the game. I'll explain what I mean. But before we get into all of that, if you're not already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Guys, we are so close to 500 subscribers. I know we can get there. I need your help though. So go ahead, join the greatest War Thunder channel on the history of YouTube and hit that red button. It'd mean a lot to me. A little bit about this video, this opening clip here. There's a little bit that's actually kind of like useful information. I realize a lot of times I just get on tangents and I end up talking about stuff that probably nobody cares about, but maybe you do. So just in case I don't talk as much about the gameplay as I'd like to, I took the time to write a bunch of like captions about like why I'm making decisions I make. If you like it, if you don't like it, let me know in the comments so I know if I should keep doing it or to not keep doing it. Anyways, the F-5E. This plane, I think it actually fits into War Thunder pretty well. They did a pretty good job at balancing the aircraft, but they forgot about one very important detail, and that's the F-4 Phantom. The F-5E in conjunction with the F-4 Phantom, the F-4E, is probably the greatest duo in War Thunder jets thus far. The Russians don't have anything like it. The MiG-21 Bis and the MiG-23 is not comparable whatsoever. The MiG-23 is probably more down there with the F-4C as far as capability goes. I know some people would disagree, but I think the majority of the community would probably come to the same consensus as me. I actually don't even have the MiG-23. I'm working on it, but I really have no desire to play it. It's kind of trash. But anyways, back to what we were talking about again. There goes the tangents I was talking about earlier. But the F-4E and the F-5 are great partners. You know, you have the F-4E with all the bells and whistles on it, every single missile you could ever want in the game, the best cannon in the game, the RWR, all the flares in the world. The flares actually deploy in the best way that you could really have them in War Thunder. I think I wrote a caption about that somewhere in here, about how the F-5E and the MiG-21 like shoot their flares outward, which in theory is a good idea, but in War Thunder not so much. I actually have a clip that I'm not going to put in yet. It was supposed to be for a how to use flares tutorial kind of video. The MiG-21, the missile, the secret of the missile doesn't actually even see the flares when the MiG-21 deploys them. At least if you're sitting behind the 6, the MiG-21, you launch an AIM-9 and the MiG-21 deploys flares, assuming it's just flying in a straight line. The flares deploy downward and to the left and to the right. The AIM-9 has a very narrow seeker head. It never even sees those flares. You actually have to kind of maneuver or at least change your aspect somewhat to make the missile have to maneuver and then see the flares. It's kind of complicated actually. Not too many people put too much thought into it, though if you do try to act like be semi-conscious of how you're using your flares, then you might actually end up having a little more success with them. Anyways, enough about the flares. But yeah, the F-4E, has a lot of great things going for it. The only thing it's never really had though is turning and dogfight capability. In 1v1s, the F-4 gets slammed by almost everything in top tier. The MiG-21 Bis will beat it in a 1v1. The Mirage is going to beat it in a 1v1. The MiG-21 MF even is going to beat it in a 1v1. The only thing that the F-4 could probably beat in 1 versus 1 is like an F-104, of which aren't 11.0 worthy anyways, really, in my opinion. Maybe one of them is, but you get the point I'm trying to make. Well, now the Americans have an F-5, which kind of bridges the gap between the BVR and missile platform carrier combat that you see in the F-4 Phantom, and a turn and burn dogfighter. So in summary, really just to make it a little less long-winded, the F-5 is great at going in and causing chaos, much like the MiG-21 Bis is really good at. It's kind of the master of chaos, both of these planes, except the Allies have a better, I guess, closer than the Russians do, and the F-4 Phantom. The Phantom is great at going in and cleaning up the work that the F-5 does. The F-5 is actually a pretty pesky bastard when it's on your 6. And with the F4 having some of the best loadouts, actually probably the best loadouts in the game, once the F5 has bled your energy, it's kind of got you with your pants down, the F4 comes and finishes the job, and they really just go great together. And that is why the allied side is completely clubbing all of top tier jets. Top tier jets aren't that fun for me anymore, to be honest, because there's really no point in flying anything other than the Americans. The Americans are slaughtering everybody. I don't think that it helps the flares got buffed, because that just makes our 60s even worse than they already were. The R60s, if you're playing against somebody that actually knows how to use the C key and looks around once in a while, it's such an easily flareable missile. It's almost useless. You only ever get R60 kills anymore if somebody has no idea you're there, which granted isn't all too rare given how bad the way the spawning system works in this game, but I just don't think that's a reliable means of balancing. Having to rely on people not seeing you to be somewhat competitive, it's just not the best idea, especially for what was once a top tier caned fighter. The MiG-21 Bis kind of got reduced to nothing, on top of the fact that it's got a GSH-23, which is the worst cannon at top tier. I despise that gun. There's just really not a whole lot going for anything but the Americans right now. Just before the F5, we had the Mirage 3E. Whoop-de-frickin-do, man. Nobody likes the Mirage 3E. It's not a good jet. Peep that little team kill right there. I think that guy was pretty pissed off, but I ended up acing and not leaving any kills for him. But it happens. I'm not mad at him anymore. So, given that we've talked about the F5 and how it's completely changed the balance of top tier and shifted the meta entirely, let's talk about the F5 itself. I actually don't like this plane at all. Now, before I tell you why I don't like this plane, I am going to straight up say, yes, it's a great plane. Yes, you should grind for it. Yes, you'll probably have fun in it. Me, on the other hand, though, it's just not the plane for me. I'll tell you why. I don't want to come off as an arrogant, cocky bastard, but there's quite a few matches that I play in a day of playing War Thunder that I tend to carry my teams a lot. Not always, you know, sometimes I'll just throw my plane straight into the ground and look like an idiot. But when time comes to carry, I need a plane that's able to carry. And the F5 just isn't it, in my opinion. It's got two AIM-9Js, which are some of the best missiles in the game, probably only topped by the Magics in my opinion. But you only get two of them. That doesn't go all very far. It does have two M39A1s, which are really good cannons, much better than things you see on Russian aircraft. However, like pretty much every 20mm in this game for some reason right now, it just doesn't do damage that 20mm used to do like a year or two ago. I don't know why. It doesn't seem to matter what belts you use. I've tried air targets, I've tried armored targets. My consensus is that the air targets tend to do critical damage more, but it's harder to get a kill, whereas armored targets will also do plenty of critical damage, as this clip is demonstrating right now. But I just find that the armored targets are a little bit more consistent, just a little bit more. They're still very inconsistent, they still don't do a lot of damage, but you can reliably set things on fire or kill pilots with armored targets, so I tend to pick armored targets on almost every 20mm. And that pretty much just sums up why I don't like the F5. I think that its killing power is actually pretty low compared to something like an F4 Phantom. I wish that the guns were more consistent. That would completely change everything. In jets, you don't really have time or opportunities to hold your guns on target and sit behind somebody. It's kind of just one shot, one aspect passes, and that should be enough to kill planes. It used to be anyways, but nowadays it seems like they really want you to sit on people's ass and just spray them down until they're finally dead, which, whether it's more realistic or not, I don't really know. It just feels to me it's a little bit more noob friendly that way. It seems like it's kind of reducing the skill gap, but it is what it is. Moving on to another thing, I don't know if you saw in that team kill clip, but the F5 damage model is absolutely cracked. This plane doesn't go down. It takes critical hits all day. And for example, in that clip, I had both my wings missing and I was on fire, and I was not actually officially dead until I hit the ground. The damage model on this plane is absolutely ridiculous. It's broken to all hell. I actually just had a clip today, the day of me recording this anyways, where I shot a missile, actually 2 R60s. I was playing the MiG-21 SMT. I got 1 R60 on an F-5. It blew half of his wing off, put him in a flat spin, and then I continued to launch 2 more R60s at this guy as he was in a flat spin going down, and all I got was a hit message on both of those missiles. And I also watched my teammate shoot 2 of his own missiles at this guy as he was spiraling to the ground. He never died until he hit the ground. I don't know what the hell Gaijin did with this damage model. I don't think it's intentional. I'd certainly hope it's not intentional, but it does need to be changed. A light aircraft like the F-5E should not be this durable whatsoever, and hopefully they get it fixed soon. I'm not going to really complain about that too much because mistakes happen. I'm just going to write it off as Gaijin didn't mean to make the damage model like this, but just throwing it out there for now, it is like that and it is pretty broken. So I've told you I don't like the guns and I don't like the fact that it only has 2 missiles, but what do I like about the plane? Well, this plane is a very, very enjoyable aircraft to fly, in that flying itself is enjoyable because it just has great flight characteristics. It doesn't bleed energy much at all at high speeds. You can actually maintain energy pretty damn well in the F5. You can pull really hard turns, 10, 11 G turns in the F5 and not bleed much speed at all. You might even maintain Mach 0.9 or a little bit above that as you're pulling as hard as you can for your first, I don't know, 90 degrees of turning. Whereas something like the MiG-21, if you pull a 90-degree turn as hard as you can, you're going to be all the way down to maybe even not Mach reading at all. It might be below 0.7, 0.75. It starts reading your Mach number somewhere around there. Point being, in the MiG-21, you'll bleed a lot of speed pulling the same kind of turn that the F-5E can. However, on low speeds, it turns magnificently. It's probably the best turn fighter at 11.0 at low speeds, and the use of flaps. That's pretty important to point out too. The flaps on this plane go almost 90 degrees straight down. It gives you plenty of lift, and it helps out a lot in stall and turn fights. Now, I think it was Define, again, I don't know how to correctly pronounce his name, but he's a pretty damn good player. I think most people that watch me probably watch him. We can all agree on that. He's really good at this game. He made a video on the J7E, J7E II, I guess, claiming that it was the best turn fighter in jets right now. I think that's what he said anyways, but regardless, I'm going to have to disagree with that statement. I think the F-5E will actually out-dogfight a J7E. Not only do I think it turns better at low speeds, I haven't really tested it for sure other than what you saw in that clip, but I think it turns better at low speeds, and it'll hold its energy better. The J7E, while yes, it does retain energy a little bit more than the MiG-21, it still is a delta wing. It still does bleed a lot of speed, and with that being said, the F5 should be able to outturn it on low speeds just because it's a better turner in my opinion. On top of that, it should be able to out-energy fight it and get it into some kind of stall maneuver. So that's that. Just a little disagreement there, I'd like to point out, because it's definitely in the F-5E's benefit. So my overall thoughts on the F-5E, it kind of broke the meta. It's definitely favoring the Allied side in this current matchmaker. It doesn't help that the Allied teams, or at least the US, is very often on both teams nowadays, so it's kind of just a match of who has more American planes on their team. On top of that, the F5 is a very, very good plane. I recommend it. It's pretty fun. It's definitely up there with some of my favorite top tier jets to fly. The only reason I don't like it, like I said, is it's just got some pretty disappointing armament for my standards. It's good for, 2, 3, 4 kills every game if you're getting good with the guns, but if you ever get in a situation where you need to get more than that, or you find yourself alone and you have to take on pretty much the entire team by yourself, the F5 just not going to cut it. Some of these clips, you can see me, I'm definitely like the opening dogfight that I had captioned, and then this one, you can see that it's definitely holding its own against all these other planes. If I had to pick one plane to have in a clutch situation as far as flight performance goes, the F5 would definitely be it. I think it's the best plane in the game for taking on multiple threats at once as far as flight characteristics go only. Like I said, I just don't think it has enough armament to actually be able to finish the job that it's able to do by flying circles around everything. And I hope you guys have noticed in some of these clips just how much I hate these guns. They just don't work when I need them to. They're critical hit machines, and you don't always get those kills. On the clip where I was counting my critical hits, I brought down a couple of them long after the fact that I shot them. However, the problem I have with critical hits more than anything is it just allows your teammates to steal your kills, which is a little frustrating, but again, it is what it is. This F-104 is, yeah, I was out of fuel. I committed to a head-on. I kind of suspected I was going to die, but I thought he was going to die too. We both committed to the head-on. We both landed shots. I critted him. He sets me on fire. He keeps flying. I lose the match. Now, if these guns were actually good and did reliable damage, he should be dead too, and he would have died first. The tickets would have bled first for him. He's already got less tickets than me. I would have won the game. Again, just frustrating. I'm disappointed with how the guns perform, and I'm disappointed with really how all the 20mm in this game perform at the moment. In most cases, I would probably rather have 50 cals. I'm not kidding. 50 cals do roughly the same amount of damage, just a little bit less, but they have more velocity than most of the 20mm in the game, and you have way more ammo, so take that for what it is. Now, this match here is actually kind of interesting. I don't play the best, really. I actually should have died multiple times during this game. If it weren't for the F-5E's completely cracked damage model, I would have died, but there are some good things we can take away from this game, and mostly the value of teamwork, really. We're going to go in, get a head-on, set someone on fire. We take a little bit of damage there. Honestly, the damage should have been a lot worse than it is, but again, the F-5E's damage model. I'm able to keep fighting pretty effectively. It didn't do a whole lot, just a little bit of fuselage damage. Now that guy in chat there, he recognized me because we've been playing a couple games together at this point. And Fox McAlpine, shout out to you. I don't know if you even know I have a YouTube channel, but if you do, this game was pretty fun to play. He's actually the guy that I'm going to end up clutching the win with. We worked together and pull out a win that could have very easily been a loss. I think it was maybe even a 2 versus 5, 2 versus 4, something like that. But considering I sustained some damage and I saw this Su-17 all the way over here at our base, I started flying back here, try to help this guy out. I want to take out the Su-17, and then immediately after that I'm going to land, not only to repair, but after killing this Su-17, I'll have 2 kills. I'll probably end up using my missiles, so I'm going to need to rearm on missiles as well. So it's kind of just a perfect situation for me. On top of that, my team's kind of getting crippled, and I'm going to need all of the missiles and ammo I'm going to have access to, really. And a nice fresh restock is not going to hurt anything. The Su-17 on critically low speed, he has no countermeasures. The AIM-9J is never going to miss at those speeds, that range, and no countermeasures. Unfortunately for me, I didn't realize this F-5C was right behind me the whole time. Narrowly missed that missile. That was 100% luck. I easily could have died there. I can partially blame the spotting system, but it's also just because of the fact I wasn't looking around. I wish I didn't have to constantly have to be looking around everywhere to see people. I do have a fully maxed out pilot for like awareness and all that. It doesn't seem to mean anything though, just because of the way the game works. But it is the way the game works, and I should have known better. So here we go in a dogfight with an F-5C. I'm very confident that we are 1 versus 1 right now, just because we're so close to my airfield. I'm also kind of expecting the anti-aircraft on the airfield to help me out a little bit with this one. And here I am spraying at this F-5C. These M39 cannons are pretty high velocity cannons, so yeah, I was kind of just spraying there to keep him from running away. He's going to have to keep maneuvering away from my shots, but I was also pretty confident that eventually I'd hit him. I'm not the best at aiming with these cannons, as you've probably figured out by this point of the video, and that's mainly because the cannons are mounted at the very top of the fuselage. I've always hated cannons mounted at the top of the fuselage, mainly because I use vertical targeting. If you guys use vertical targeting, you'll probably know why I hate when the cannons are mounted at the top, but for those of you who don't use vertical targeting, What vertical targeting does is it makes it so that whatever distance you have set for your convergence, I usually use 500 or 600 meters, something like that. It means that it'll vertically align your cannons so that at 500 meters, for example, since that's what I use, right where your crosshair is aiming is where the cannon, the round, the projectile is going to actually hit at 500 meters. That's useful in a lot of situations. For example, if you're sitting on someone's tail at 500 meters, if you're in a MiG-15, for example, the gun's mounted underneath the fuselage at 500 meters. You're not going to have to compensate upwards to compensate for the fact that your cannon's mounted below you. It'll just kind of shoot the round upward at a slight angle to make sure that it's right on target at 500 meters. So that sounds good. Why is it a problem? Well, it does the exact same thing when the cannon's mounted above the fuselage. At 500 meters, it means that my cannons are going to be angled slightly downward so that they're right on target at 500 meters. Now, if I'm pulling a high aspect shot on somebody that's kind of turning and I have to lead them a lot, it actually means that I'm going to have to lead them even more because my guns are angled downward. It's really hard to explain, but hopefully you can kind of understand what I'm trying to say. Essentially, I have to lead a lot more, not a lot more, but just a little bit more than I would if I wasn't using vertical targeting. It just kind of throws off the visual picture of what you expect, where you expect the rounds to go versus where they actually go. Now, yeah, I could just easily fix this by taking off vertical targeting, but I just use it on everything. I get used to it on everything. That way I don't have to worry about turning it on and off for whatever plane I'm using at the time. Now my dude, as I mentioned earlier, Fox Alpine, he landed his F-104 with one wing, so shout out to you. Big save there on that landing. I'm very impressed you pulled it off. Well done. While he was going back to the base, I just kind of flew around and flew back toward him because I'd like to say I'm pretty good at jets, but no matter how good you are, you're very, very unlikely to win a 1 versus 4 or 5 situation. So I waited for him. Always nice to have a teammate, and I'm very thankful I did because I definitely needed a teammate. I'm also going to point out that I do have my radar on. The F-5 has no radar weapons available to it. The radar is almost pointless. There's really no need for it, except for one very important thing. I'm sure not everybody knows this, so for those of you who don't, if you have your radar on and it's scanning, you can actually see dots visually further than you would if they were off. If you want to test it, next time you're in a War Thunder era realistic battle, go ahead and fly around with your radar on until you see dots far away on the horizon. Stare at that dot, turn your radar off, and it'll more than likely disappear. Again, I don't know why. You can just see dots visually further with your radar on. So that's why I had it on in this case. It turns out that this MiG-21MF, I believe it is, ends up being behind us. I try to warn him of the missile. He knows it's there. He's able to effectively dodge. Unfortunately, I just missed that head on. Just miscalculated his flight path there. Didn't take the proper lead. And now we're in a 2 versus 1 fight with this MiG-21. I know he's not the only guy left on their team though, so I want to kill him as quickly as possible because while we are down in overall numbers in this current fight, we have the advantage. That AIM-9J somehow missed. I don't know how. He didn't flare or anything like that. It didn't look like he maneuvered particularly hard. The AIM-9 just didn't feel like killing him today, so we're going to spool up another one and hopefully that one will track. We're getting a little close though. I'm not going to waste an AIM-9 when he's stalling out like this right in front of me. Couple gunshots, critical hits, set him on fire. He starts flat spinning, so I don't really worry about finishing him off. And we bagged ourselves another MiG-21. He's actually going to take a minute to burn, and that's fine. We do end up getting the kill for him, but any second now, another enemy's going to come in, and really, I should have probably died in this fight. I think it's an F-5, another F-5E. And maybe he's the last one alive actually, so maybe we weren't at quite as much of a disadvantage as I thought. And right on time, there he is. Missiles out, we flare a little bit. You don't have to flare too much anymore guys to dodge a missile. If you know what you're doing with the flares, you can really just tap it once or twice. I never even use the flare series key, I just have them on single drops and it works just fine. So we're in a dogfight with an F-5E, and I figured that since I started my turns earlier and I'm out in front of him, I'd probably just be pulling a little bit outside of his nose the entire time. And that was a big mistake by me because it's actually quite the opposite. He's able to get shots on me, he unloads quite a bit of 20mm into me, and I really should be dead right now. I think it's a combination of the fact that 20mm just aren't good cannons anymore, and the F-5E damage model, again, being cripplingly broken. Either way, I expected that guy to die. I had him stalled out pretty well there. I saw that my teammate was coming in, and I knew he was going to clean him up. Unfortunately, I didn't expect him to get all those shots on me, and now I'm very crippled, and we are in a 2 versus 2. So yeah, I guess there was 4 people alive, and we were at quite a disadvantage. I'm just hitting the deck right now, trying to get as much speed as I possibly can. I flare away one of those missiles, but again, I'm fighting a mirrored target. He hits me again with 20mm. It doesn't seem to do much damage at all. And he's out of here. He's not going to be able to get another attack in for a while. F-104 takes that guy down. I don't even have to worry about him. Big play on his end because that means I have another chance at living. My plane is in terrible shape right now. I shouldn't be flying thanks to the broken damage model I am, and I'm just running for my life at this point. I can't dogfight this guy who's got every single ability that I have except better because he's not damaged, so I really just have to rely on my teammate here to take some of the pressure off. And luckily for me, that's exactly what he does. I noticed that this F5 is actually going to start worrying about my teammate, as he really should be. He thinks I'm going back to base. I know he thinks I'm going back to base, so I'm going to turn around and start to re-engage because the F-104 is a fast plane, but that's about all it's got on the F-5. The F-5 is going to fly circles around it if he gets it within range, so I'm on my way back to help my teammate. I've got 1 missile left, and my engines aren't cooking themselves or anything like that, so I'm not really worried about falling out of the sky. I just have to realize that I am in no condition to actually get in a dogfight. I don't plan on dogfighting though, so I'm just going to fly up, kind of creep in close. I'm hoping that this guy isn't really looking for me anymore. He shouldn't really see me as a threat. I wouldn't see me as a threat, to be honest. And right when I saw the kind of bait that F-104 put on for me right there, I knew immediately this guy was dead. Even if he even noticed that missile and was able to flare, he was going pretty slow at the time I launched it, and it may have found its mark anyways, and that eliminates him from the match and gives us the victory. So again, Fox McAlpine, shout out to you. It was a pleasure playing with you, man. We did a really good job clutching up that 2 versus 5, if I do say so myself, 2 versus 4, whatever it was, and concludes the match and really concludes this video. So I like the plane. I don't really like what it did to the game. I don't really enjoy top tier jets anymore, to be honest, but it is a pretty fun plane. If you don't have it, it's definitely worth taking a look at. I'd try to get your hands on it. I think you'll enjoy your time with it. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be taking another look at top tier anytime soon, at least not until it's a little more competitive for all the nations. So until then, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something from the video, and I hope I'll see you on the next one. See ya.